Awakening by Solo Citizen. Chapter 1. Attacked. Present Day. Lumina bobbed her head to her own rhythm as she drifted through the heavens over a plain of reflected starlight. With music beating in her ears, she lowered her whirling power brusher onto the Lunadream's hull and held it there until the stained plating sparkled. She smiled at the work she had accomplished thus far and kicked away from the hull with her hind hooves and drifted over to another section. All around her, the galaxy was in bloom. At her right, the neon gases of an unnamed nebula burned red, and though it was too far away for her to comprehend, its size ate up the sky, while to her left, lightning storms large enough to swallow her whole world flickered across the night side of a gas giant and lit up its endless clouds in brief flashes. It all made Lumina feel very small. She pulled her eyes from the stars, pressed her power brusher against a patch of goo, and sang along to the song pouring in through her helmet.
You're gonna be knowing the loneliest kind of lonely. It may be rough going just to do your things, the hardest thing to do.
If this is your way of expressing that you tire of work, you may return inside at any time.
The ship's computer, Animus, maintained constant radio contact with her. More often than she cared to admit, she forgot to kill the comm channel.
The distances of space will conceal our paint job from even the closest passers-by.
Lumina blushed, but only just a little. He had seen her indulge in far more embarrassing activities when she thought she was alone. Luckily, there was no one out there for him to tell her secrets to. She cut power to the brusher and slung her forehooves over the steering bar.
I know that. We haven't even gotten a long-range ping in over a month. I just want the Lunadream to shine when we get back to New Canterlot. And it's a good excuse to go outside and sing along to my music.
I've noticed this on several occasions.
The inflection in his voice never changed, and after all their years together, she never quite got used to it.
I've documented 546 occurrences within the last month. I've noticed that most of these incidents occur while you were bathing.
You listen to me while I'm in the bathroom? I just want you to know, if this was coming from anyone else, I might be a little creeped out.
As would I. Talking to oneself is usually considered a sign of insanity. As for the intrusion of your privacy, I have very little choice when you leave the intercom in your room on. I cannot filter information out.
A dark wall raced up from the bow of the ship, over the spinning ramjet ring, and down to the reactor dome where Lumina toiled away. The darkness shot up her suit and registered as a sudden cold on her heads-up display. It was the shadow of a gas giant. It blotted out the stars overhead.
You know what? I think the ship is clean enough for today.
Lumina tapped a button on her foreleg to kick-start the magnets on her hooves and let them pull her down to the hull. Another tap to her console, and the scrubber collapsed away to a fluffy disk on her back. She trotted over the reactor dome to an airlock hatch.
Permission to come aboard, Animus?
Always granted. My one and only friend.
The hatch popped open, and a warning flashed over Lumina's heads-up display right as an electromagnet locked onto her and pulled her into the hatch. As she shot into the heart of the ship, green and red safety lights on the side of the tube moved up her visor like water droplets over a windshield. The lift deposited her in the dorsal airlock C2, a well-lit room that always smelled like antifreeze. After 3 deep space transport assignments, she had memorized the name and location of every hatch, bulkhead, cargo hold, engine room, and transmat station. She even named a few. Space travel was, after all, boring. Lumina stood up on her hind legs and pried the helmet from her head, minding her unicorn horn, as always. She dropped back down on all fours and used her mouth to pull her free from the rest of the suit. It tasted of sweat and plastic, and frankly, that taste was the worst part of any trip outside. Her white coat shimmered with perspiration under the LED light. The excursion had been far less kind to her mane. Its golden yellow color turned to a nasty dirty yellow and sat on her head in as much disarray as a bird's nest. The grime was a small price to pay for a few hours outside. The faster-than-light freighter Luna Dream was approximately 1.2 kilometers in length. That said, the vast majority of the ship housed an enormous dark energy reactor and the FTL drive shaft, and only a tiny fraction of it was left over as living quarters and Animus's AI core. Luckily, the cargo itself was immaterial. Lumina and her AI companion were en route to New Canterlot to deliver a digital copy of every book in recorded history, along with news and information picked up along the way. It was the most important, and by far the most valuable cargo the two of them had ever handled, but also the most entertaining.
I'm going to the observation deck to do some reading. How's our approach?
Lumina shook out her knotted-up tail and set a quick pace out of the airlock. Animus's voice followed her out of the airlock and into the hyperlift, across the hallway, and continued unbroken as the lift sped up the spine of the ship.
All systems are functioning within standard parameters. The gas giants LF-131 and LJ-130 are aligning as scheduled. I have calculated that their masses should provide us with enough gravity-assisted acceleration to trigger our FTL drive with minimal fuel consumption. We will be entering FTL space as planned at 300 hours on the 5th day of planting season, 10,056 AC, roughly 6 hours from now.
Great job, Animus, as always.
The lift hummed along with a smooth vibration. As soon as the hyperlift stopped, Lumina cantered down the spiral staircase to the observation deck. It was easily her favorite part of the ship. Illuminated by sun-mood lamps and holographic flowers, it always glowed with a creamy light and smelled faintly of spring. It sat just beneath Luna Dream's bridge, the most forward section of the ship, and provided a spectacular view of the cosmic starscape. A hoofful of tables, couches, and hardwood floor pulled the room together. Tapping a button on the table stirred up light across the surface. Within seconds, a menu coalesced in green and red words, and from there she used her hooves to navigate the touchscreen and accessed her current read. A holographic image of the elements of harmony, a revised reference guide, flung up from the table and followed her to the couch.
Lumina, may I ask you a question?
Go ahead.
Lumina gestured with her head to turn a page. A pastel image of twilight sparkle and the other elements of harmony vanquishing some sort of twisted dragon creature filled the page. She flipped by.
I was wondering why you have chosen to occupy your time with that book.
There isn't much else to do around here. Most of this job involves waiting. I got to find something to do with myself.
I am not referring to the act of reading itself. Allow me to rephrase. Why have you chosen to read that book in particular?
I don't know.
Lumina looked up from the page, then flipped back to the image of twilight sparkle and the elements.
The ship's database recommended it, and I liked it enough to keep reading.
Lumina pointed at a blue Pegasus just below twilight sparkle. Her mane and tail were rainbow-colored, and she was reared up on her hind legs in defiance.
What I like most of all are the characters. See her? That's Rainbow Dash. The legends of old Equestria say that she could fly so fast that magic itself would explode around her in a sonic rain boom.
Lumina aimed her hoof at a purple unicorn beside the Pegasus.
And that's Twilight Sparkle. Believe it or not, when I was growing up, I wanted to be just like her.
Equestria. Lumina, please stand by while I access additional databases. Equestria, the fabled lost continent that, according to occult lore, sank into the sea approximately 100 years after Celestia. Many fringe religious movements maintain a belief in the myth, despite a lack of historical or physical evidence. I always wondered if you subscribed to such fantasy.